Getting up on a Saturday morning and going to the mosque, you know, they'd rather be out playing. When they go to school, they're going to learn a different way of life. And my role is say, look, you know, this is my way of life. This is how I would like you to live your life. And I think it's while you're under my roof, you will live it that way.
Keeping their children separate from certain aspects of British culture has meant that almost half of Muslim parents in Britain today say they would rather send their children to an Islamic school. We were able to compare our findings with those of the last major survey in this area to get a real sense of what's happened to Muslim integration over the past 12 years.
Is the Muslim community more alienated than when you looked in 1994?
In the survey that we did in 1994, 24% of people said that they would send an 11-year-old child to a state-funded Muslim school. Now you find that it's 44% who say that. So that's definitely a growth towards a kind of more distinct Muslim community identity or practice.
1 in 3 Muslims disapprove of the freedoms allowed in this country and would rather live under Sharia law. That is the law as laid down by the Quran. And the same number dream that one day Britain will become an Islamic state. I went to Peckham in South London to meet 29-year-old Hakan Han, a Turkish Cypriot in origin who believes that life under Sharia law would be better. Religious courts and rule by imams would, he believes, be far more effective than the current system.
I feel that democracy altogether isn't working as a system. I believe that man-made laws really isn't the answer. Why not go back to ruling from the church and ruling the land from the way how God says how you should rule it?
Hakan particularly approves of Sharia law's range of harsh physical punishments for crimes, which would apply equally to children as adults.
There's a lot of punishments in Sharia law, and the way I see those punishments is like a deterrent. Same way as how Western worlds they use their nuclear weapons as a deterrent. Kids under 16, they're not eligible for punishment as, say, a full grown-up is.
And they ought to be.
I think everybody should be taken, be given a certain punishment for their actions, especially if it's really bad.
To live under Sharia law is still only something a minority of Muslims desire. In fact, what Muslims want varies a good deal, reflecting the diversity of opinion that exists within the community.
For the most part, Muslim Britain does not speak with one voice. However, on a small number of issues, there is an important consensus of opinion, a consensus that is in direct conflict with the rest of the nation. In part 3, we shall see where the flashpoints lie.
Muslim Britain wants many different things, but there are some issues on which there is a striking consensus. Conflict will be the result when this consensus is opposed to the values of British democracy. And for a tiny number of radicals, these are conflicts to be settled through violent action. Finding a way to deal with these issues, therefore, is vital.
If British society, if British politicians can't do deals with Muslims where there's a strong Muslim consensus, then we really do have a problem, because then moderate Muslims will be thrown back onto the radicals' agenda.
One of the fundamental values that Britain holds dear is freedom of speech. But it's a value which Muslim Britain rejects. An overwhelming number of British Muslims believe that free speech must have its limits, that no one should be allowed to insult their religion. These tensions came to a head when the Danish cartoons depicting the Prophet Muhammad with a bomb on his turban were circulated all over the world.
They have come together to insult the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
In London, extreme protests followed, showing both the fury of some Muslims and the severity of the punishments they appeared to demand. Although only held by a very small minority, it is these views that seem to pose the greatest threat to the tolerance that so defines this country. To understand why some Muslims take such an uncompromising position, I talked to Mohammed, a 23-year-old British-born Muslim. He lives in North London with his family, but wanted to meet me in a coffee shop. Mohammed studied at art college and now works as a freelance graphic designer.
How do you feel about the, those cartoons that abused the name of the Prophet?
If people have cartoons insult the messengers, it affects globally the Muslims worldwide, not 1.5 Muslims in the UK, 1.5 billion Muslims around the world.
I mean, they were not published in this country.
Where was the condemnation? Where was the demand that these kind of cartoons be stopped, and that people be punished?
Beheading the people who did it.
Yeah.
Is that what should have happened?
Now, in Islam, there is punishment for certain crimes. Like, for example, if somebody is murdered, we do have punishment in Islam, death penalty. Or somebody is raped, we believe in death penalty for them. The same thing, anybody who insults the messengers, any messenger, Jesus, Moses, Muhammad, we believe they have tested their sentence.
The offence caused by the Danish cartoons also led many more moderate Muslims to protest. They did not call for such extreme punishments, but they still wanted to stop the publication of anything that offended their religion.
At any time, when those insults.
People who publish the cartoon of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ should be punished to a certain extent, because that was so hurtful and it was so offensive. And you know what? Everyone should be like sensitive towards other people's faith.
In Brixton, I met 29-year-old Abdul Haq, born a Christian, converted to Islam at 17. He's one of the many who believe there's no